Greenland, a frozen island wasteland of ice and snow, and with only 56,000 people living here, it is one of the most remote inhabited places on Earth. So why does the United States suddenly want Greenland so badly? And that requires us to take a look at Greenland's role during the Cold War and throughout the history of modern warfare. Because it turns out that Greenland is becoming one of the most strategically important islands in the world. And while most people would find Greenland uninhabitable, the United States military has called Greenland home for over 70 years, thanks to an ongoing agreement with Denmark, which owns the territory of Greenland. In fact, the United States actively operates the Pituffik Space Base, formerly known as the Thule Air Base, on the northern part of Greenland. The base houses a highly advanced network of missile warning sensors operated by the United States Space Force Division, Space Delta IV. It also serves as a control point for an array of early warning satellites, which allow the United States to monitor ballistic missile launches from around the world in mere seconds. For example, when Russia took the unprecedented step of launching an IRBM missile at Ukraine in November of 2024, the US knew the exact moment in which Russia launched the missile and tracked it to its endpoint in Dnipro, Ukraine. This is all thanks to the US bases at Greenland, and without them, it would significantly hinder America's ability to protect our skies and the skies of our allies. This makes the Pituffik Space Base critical in the event of war with Russia. And in addition to missile detection, Greenland also houses top-secret US research facilities, which serves as a launch point for US strategic bombers and other allied countries. And in fact, the US has a long-time interest in building research bases in Greenland, and for example, in 1959, Greenland was home to Camp Sentry, which was a Cold War-era installation which conducted research into construction techniques under Arctic conditions. But it turned out that this was a cover story for a top-secret project called Project Iceworm. Project Iceworm was undertaken to install a vast network of nuclear missile launch sites, which could survive a first strike from the USSR. The whole facility was powered by a nuclear reactor, but was eventually aborted due to issues with the stability of the foundational ice sheet. And in fact, the actual location of the secret base was only recently discovered in April of 2024, when NASA scientists unknowingly photographed the base buried beneath layers of ice while conducting research from their Gulfstream jet. And not only is Greenland a major interest of the United States, but Russia has expressed significant interest in the territory for similar reasons. For example, if an ICBM missile was launched from Greenland, it could strike the capital of the United States or Russia at the exact same time. That's because Greenland is located at equal distance between the capitals of the United States and Russia, with Washington, D.C. being almost 2,500 miles away and Moscow being the exact same 2,500 miles away as well. And since America has bases in Greenland and the island is located at equal distance, the U.S. can detect ICBM launches within seconds, giving the United States about 25 to 30 minutes to respond to an attack, while Russia would have only about 10 minutes in contrast. Therefore, the national security concerns for both Russia and the United States are quite obvious. Not only does Greenland have a massive potential as a forward operating base for defensive capabilities, but also offensive capabilities as well. And it's currently not known whether the US has nuclear missiles actively stationed in Greenland, but it could field them there if it chose to do so. And Russia, which has become increasingly hostile against the United States in recent years, has begun rapidly expanding their interest in the Arctic. And that's because the fastest way for Russian missiles to reach the United States would be via the North Pole, and in fact, traveling right over Greenland. Therefore, security around Greenland is of utmost importance, especially considering the recent large-scale joint Russian-Chinese military exercises in the Arctic. And this brings us to the ultimate question: why does the United States suddenly want to acquire Greenland from Denmark? This is understandably a confusing proposition to some, as we already have bases in Greenland, and Denmark is seemingly more than happy to host US forces on the island. And the actual definitive reason is actually not known to the public, but we can make some conclusions based upon available information. For example, Denmark is tasked with patrolling Greenland and defending the territory from hostile ground attacks from enemy forces. And also, Denmark's defense of Greenland consists of only 4 aging naval patrol vessels, a surveillance plane, and some dog sled patrols. This makes the US increasingly concerned that Denmark is currently not capable of defending the island from a possible Russian invasion. And with war between NATO and Russia becoming increasingly more likely, this makes Denmark's lack of defenses a bigger issue than previously thought. And this fear was recently confirmed when Denmark's defense minister, Troels Lund Poulsen, told reporters on January the 9th of 2024, quote-unquote, that the Danish government has failed to invest in Greenland's security and have neglected for many years to make the necessary investments in ships and in aircraft that will help monitor the kingdom, and that is why we're now trying to do something about it. Danish officials were also recently quoted saying that they hope, quote-unquote, unquote, the upgrades will go toward meeting American demands for increasing the surveillance of Greenland. This clearly suggests that the United States has begun to lose confidence that Denmark is able to properly defend the island in the event of a foreign invasion. This is a serious issue because a successful rapid foreign invasion by Russia would mean losing control over the Pituffik Space Base and would give the Russians access to highly sensitive missile detection systems, exposing national secrets and causing a large part of United States missile defense to go blind. And besides the critical military value of Greenland, the island is also home to various valuable rare earth minerals, which are important in manufacturing of modern electronics, such as computers, cell phones, and other important equipment. And since the Arctic ice is beginning to melt, it gives new access to navies from around the world to approach Greenland much easier. And with the ice melting, foreign adversaries are now capable of creating new shipping lanes for commercial cargo vessels which would pass much closer to Greenland. This means that Greenland is becoming extremely valuable as both a military and economic resource for the largest nations on Earth, such as Russia and China. And that brings us back to the issue of whether Denmark is up to the task of properly defending Greenland from these larger countries. And currently, US officials believe the answer to that question is no. And while Danish officials are taking efforts to increase their investment into the defense of the island, the US views this issue as one of utmost priority and seemingly wants to acquire the island instead. This is very likely due to the fact that the tensions between Russia and the United States are reaching a point at which war could break out at any moment. And as Putin's economy collapses under US sanctions, this leaves Putin in a desperate position where he might launch a war against the West. Therefore, the United States views this as an immediate threat, which would require the acquisition of Greenland from Denmark. This would allow the United States to immediately fill the gaps in Greenland's security and prevent a possible Russian invasion of the territory. The only issue is that Denmark is seemingly unwilling to sell Greenland to the United States. Clearly, some in Denmark are highly offended and very opposed to the idea of the US acquiring Greenland whatsoever. And nonetheless, even though this is a very controversial idea, the US has recently doubled down on the idea of Greenland becoming a US territory, but it remains unknown how that objective will be accomplished considering the current position of Danish officials. Nonetheless, Greenland is set to become the next possible confrontation zone in the coming years. And most would have never thought that the frozen wasteland would suddenly become so desirable, but that's currently the position in which the territory finds itself. And as the US ramps up pressure on Denmark to make a deal to acquire the land, things are certainly bound to become more interesting in the coming months. But that's all for this video, so be sure to like and subscribe for more Enforcer Explained videos just like this one. Also be sure to check out our other content on our channel to stay updated on the conflict news from around the world. I'm Enforcer Matt, and I'll see you all in the next one.